learned from Cynthia, I think. Banging.
All right. Gavel us in.
Wow.
I learned from the best. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, May the 6th. And the Salem-Keizer Public Schools Budget Committee meeting is now called to order. It is now 6:01. And to kick us off, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. We are gathered today on the land of the Kalapuya, who are represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. The relationship between the Kalapuya people and this land continues unbroken to this day, and we offer gratitude for the land and for the generations present and past who have stewarded the land since time immemorial. We respectfully acknowledge and honor past, present, and future Native American and Indigenous students and staff of the Salem-Keizer Public Schools. We invite you to join us in honoring these ancestral grounds and celebrating the resilience and strength of all Native American and Indigenous people. All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, we'll get started. I will first do roll call. And so when I call your name, please say if you're here. William Guthridge.
Here.
Jean Jatan, who I think should be virtual. Is Jean with us yet? Not yet? All right. Catherine Jones. Here. Jessica Peterson.
Here.
Oscar Porras.
Here.
Patrick
Virtually.
Schwab. Thank you. Glad you're here, Oscar. Patrick Schwab.
Here.
Kelly Strawn.
Here.
Cynthia Richardson.
Here.
Karina Guzman Ortiz.
Here.
Lisa Harnish, here. Excused, Ashley Carson Cottingham, Satya Chandagiri,
Here, please.
and Maria Hinos Pressy is also excused, and then Chrissy Hudson.
Here.
All right, wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Glad you are here. So our first order of business this evening is to elect a budget committee chair and a vice chair. I would love to remind the committee of some of the following agreements or process pieces. All of you should have received the voting procedures in an email prior to the start of the meeting. Members you should also have a copy at your seat. Just a reminder, it takes a vote of 8 to elect a chair or a vice chair, and that is a majority of the committee, not a majority of those who are present, even if there's just one nominee. Nominations don't require a second. We will use a roll call vote process, and that no other budget committee business can take place until the chair and the vice chair are elected. So with that, I'll now open the floor for nominations for the Budget Committee Chair for 25-26. Yes, Karina.
Thank you, Chair Harnish. I know you mentioned Maria Hinojos Pressy isn't present today. She is leading the Budget Committee meeting at Chariots. However, I did let her know that I was interested in nominating her, and she was willing and open to the opportunity of chairing the Budget Committee if elected, so I'd like to nominate Director Hinojos Pressy.
Great, thank you. All right, any others? Yes, William.
Hi, I'd like to nominate Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy, okay. All right, are there any other nominations? All right, so with that, so we have two nominees. We have Maria and we have Chrissy. And so with that, we will take a roll call and you'll respond yes or no. So I'd like to ask our Budget Committee Secretary to begin that roll call process.
Thank you, Chair. Bear with me, we're going to go down the line one by one. Since we have two people up for vote, just respond with the person's name that you would like to vote for. William Guthridge,
Chrissy?
Jean Gitan, is she with us yet? No, okay. Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Chrissy Hudson.
Oscar Porras,
Excuse me, I'll guess my vote for Maria.
Patrick Schwab,
Chrissy?
Kelly Strawn,
Maria.
Cynthia Richardson,
Maria.
Karina Guzman, Lisa Harnish,
Maria.
Satya Chandragiri,
Chrissy Hudson, please.
and Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson.
Okay, we don't have 8, so we will go to round 2. William Guthridge,
Chrissy Hudson?
Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Chrissy Hudson.
Oscar Porras,
Maria.
Patrick Schwab,
Chrissy Hudson?
Kelly Strawn,
Maria.
Cynthia Richardson,
Maria.
Karina Guzman Ortiz, Lisa Harnish,
Maria.
Satya Chandragiri,
Chrissy Hudson, please.
Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson.
Okay. So I would just like to remind everyone that we will just continue voting until we reach consensus. So we will start with round 3.
Kind of point of order, please.
Yes.
Is there anywhere in the policy that says the candidate who is wanting to be in the nominated has to be present?
I do believe we looked into that issue when we understood that Maria might not be available, and so she's not required to be present, as long as we're assured that she is willing to accept the nomination. And I'll also just add, on top of Ashley's instructions, we don't choose this method. We understand that it's got some built-in inefficiencies and challenges. It is, I believe, the method that's prescribed, though, and so we use what we must.
It's a Robert's Rules. It's not a board policy, it's Robert's Rules.
So can I introduce a motion, if chair permits? For the sake of this election, can we require that the candidate be present? Otherwise, we are going to end up with a stalemate, you know. So the motion is the candidate has to be present. Let's make an exception to that rule. And would you entertain that as a motion?
I don't think
Unfortunately, we can't do any business until we have a chair and vice chair first.
Yeah, for the sake of electing a chair, I would like to introduce a motion that we set aside the rules that's prescribed and adopt a temporary rule which says the candidate who wants to run for the position of chair should be present physically.
don't.
Yeah, I don't believe we can, well, there's 2 issues here. One is, I don't believe we can take a motion to set aside a Robert's Rules process that would actually fundamentally change the procedures that govern the body. And the second is that we did get a chance to talk to Rebecca about this in advance, and the body can't take action, and the first action that the body must take is selecting a new chair. I do understand your intent here. It's very awkward and inefficient.
William Guthridge,
Chrissy Hudson.
Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Maria.
Oscar Porras,
Maria.
Patrick Schwab,
Maria.
Kelly Strawn,
Maria.
Cynthia Richardson,
Maria.
Karina Guzman Ortiz,
Maria.
Lisa Harnish,
Maria.
Satya Chandagiri,
Chrissy Hudson, please.
Chrissy Hudson,
Chrissy Hudson.
Okay, that is 7 for Maria, so we will move to round 4. William Guthridge,
Chrissy Hudson.
Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Maria.
Oscar Porras,
Maria.
Patrick Schwab,
Maria.
Kelly Strawn,
Maria.
Cynthia Richardson,
Maria.
Karina Guzman Ortiz,
Maria.
Lisa Harnish,
Maria.
Satya Chandagiri,
Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson,
May I ask quick what the count is?
7 for Maria currently and 2 for Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson.
Round 5?
So round 5.
Round 5.
So they had this at Metro, I
Let me
think,
just, yeah.
where they took a brief recess to like regroup and figure out where the votes were, and then they came back. Is that permissible? Can like we discuss amongst ourselves, or are we just gonna keep on going rope?
Well, last year I gave in, and I can just give in and change my vote if that's permitted. Do we need to make another round for that, or what do you want to do?
I have 5 rounds listed on our paper here. I mean,
Am I permitted to just change my last Chrissy to Maria, or not?
We have to go to the next.
we need to go through the next
Yeah,
round.
that's it.
The next one, just for official.
Okay, and Jean Gitan has just joined. Welcome, Jean. Okay, William Guthridge,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jean Gitan, okay. Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Maria.
Oscar Porras,
Maria.
Patrick Schwab,
Maria.
Kelly Strawn,
Maria.
Cynthia Richardson,
Maria.
Karina Guzman Ortiz,
Maria.
Lisa Harnish,
Maria.
Satya Chandagiri,
Chrissy Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson,
Maria, I have a question, though. Is that okay if I ask
After
one?
the vote.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was.
You can ask the vote. Chair can allow it.
Okay, do you have the
Okay.
final tally?
That's 8 for Maria as Budget Committee Chair.
Great, awesome, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And did you have a question? Yeah.
I was just curious. Last, in the past, when we voted the chair and they immediately took position, so do we just get to keep you today, or do we have a problem with that too? Do we need a motion to allow her to keep going for today's meeting?
So since Maria's not here, then we will, I'll continue to call for vice chair. And then if the vice chair doesn't want to take over, then I can continue out through this meeting. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Jean has entered the meeting as well.
Jean has, she said, great, thank you, and welcome, Jean, glad you're here. All right, so we'll now move on to the election of the Budget Committee Vice Chair. We'll have the same voting procedures, and the same reminders are in place. And I will now open the floor for nominations for the Budget Committee Vice Chair for 25-26. And Cynthia?
I nominate Kelly Strong. Strong.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Yes, please. I nominate Director Hudson, Chrissy Hudson.
Any other nominations? All right. If you could call the roll, please, Ashley, that would be great.
Okay. William Guthrie, oh, sorry, to start again, just say the name of the individual you're voting for. William Guthridge,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jean Gitan, okay, Catherine Jones,
Chrissy Hudson.
Jessica Peterson,
Chrissy Hudson.
Oscar Porras,
Chrissy.
Patrick Schwab,
Christy.
Kelly Strong,
Kelly Strawn.
Cynthia Richardson,
Kelly Strong.
Karina Guzman Ortiz,
Kelly Strawn.
Lisa Harnish,
Kelly Strawn.
Satya Chandragiri,
Director Hudson.
Chrissy Hudson,
Chrissy Hudson.
and Jean Gitan.
Good evening, Chrissy Hudson, please.
That's 8 for Chrissy Hudson as vice chair.
Congratulations, Chrissy.
All right, well, congratulations. We now have a chair and a vice chair. Since Maria is not present this evening, Chrissy, did you want to continue chairing the meeting, or? Okay, if you'd like to, you are welcome to. Great. And here are some talking, do you want to switch seats?
Yep. Let the camera update that.
Okay. Okay. We can,
Camera one. Take your time.
it's really about the balance.
Good job. It's good to see you.
All right.
That shows it's Queen's public meeting.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Exact verbiage is here. This is pretty cool. Thank you, sir. I will now turn it over to Superintendent Castaneda for Superintendent's 25-26 budget message. That I'm done.
Thank you, Vice Chair / Director Hudson. I am pleased to be in front of you all today with this budget address. I am mostly pleased that it is 2025 and not 2024. As those of you who were with us last year will recall that it was a much different context and far more difficult. And I would also like to welcome the members of our audience who chose to join us tonight. Before I jump in, I'm going to give you just a quick tour through the materials in front of you. So first of all, you have the proposed budget book. And you will recall that this is the first and most important document that you'll work with. Over the course of our time together, we're going to provide supplementary narrative information, walk you through elements of it, and then collect and answer questions over the course of your time together. In addition to that, in your binder, you have information about the meeting dates. And then I also just want to remind you of this document, which is the committee protocols related to the work that we'll do together. You have a org chart in your binder. It looks like this. We included this because last year there was a request for it and it seemed best to just get in front of it. So there it is for your ready use. All right, so I am going to start off just by saying this is a very different May than last year. This time last year, we were in the process of bringing $70 million in reductions and adjustments to you for consideration. And although it was a moment that I hoped to be wrong about, in that address I said, I think we will see many other Oregon districts in the situation that Salem-Keizer was in last year. And I regret to say that that is more clearly true. As we do this, our neighboring districts are doing reductions that are significant. Portland, Beaverton, Tiger-Tualatin, Reynolds. There are reductions happening all around, and it's reflective of the challenges of the moment and some of the trends that we're going to talk about together today. One of the things that I also want to open with is just, despite the challenges and the uncertainty we face, I do just feel this inexhaustible sense of optimism and hope about the work we've started doing together. The resets last year were hard. They were hard on our system. They were hard on our staff and communities. And this year, there's been time and space for some stabilization and even a little bit of recovery. And it has also given us time to develop a strategic plan that's aligned to this budget. So there are a lot of pieces that are moving in the right direction, even though the fiscal outlook remains quite challenging for Salem-Keizer and for all districts. This presentation is going to fall into 4 parts. The first is just going to give you like kind of a broad overview. The second part, we're going to go a little bit deeper dive, and in that I'm going to take you through a few key pages in the budget book. In the third, I'm going to just show you a little bit how we've aligned our investments to our strategic plan. And in the final portion, we're going to collect your questions. For tonight, if you have questions that we know the answer to on the spot, we will answer them. What is more probable is that we won't be able to answer them on the spot, and so we're going to collect clarifying responses to make sure we really understand the question, take it back to our team, research it, and then bring it back to you at your next committee meeting. So with that, let's start with broad overview. Can you advance to, yes, okay, perfect. What you're looking at here is the Q3 update for Salem-Keizer. And it's because to talk about the year that we are entering really requires a little bit of a level setting on the year that we're currently in. So in this chart, what you will see, Erin, can you advance? Yeah, what you'll see here first is that the $70 million in adjustments and reductions that we did have created short-term sustainability for our district, very needed. You may remember that about a year ago, I told you we're leaving a $27 million expense revenue gap in our budgeted expenses because it was too much to close, and we wanted to try to see if we could close it through expense management and vacancy savings. And so part of what you'll see here in that red circle is that we were quite successful in doing that. And an enormous amount of gratitude needs to be delivered straight to the hands of our finance team. It takes a lot of skill to land something like this. And this Q3 summary of our expenses in the general fund is based on our real expenses. So while it is not yet closed out for the fiscal year, it is getting very close to actuals. Can you advance one more? The second thing you'll see is a $99 million ending fund balance. That is salvaged from the direction it was headed before we made those reductions. That 99 million is about 14%, so it's above policy targets. And we're going to talk about that more throughout the presentation. But for now, one of the things that I want to foreshadow on this is that that is the ending fund balance that districts across Oregon by percentage wish they were looking at right now, because the reductions that they are facing across the region are a combination of escalating expenses and insufficiency of an ending fund balance. The further reason that I am grateful for that, even though it is above policy targets, is that we are in the middle of, I would say, unprecedented federal uncertainty. And any number of things could happen. Things could go completely normal, as they always do. There could be congressional delays. There could be reductions. And this gives us the ability to adapt to some of the things that may happen. And we will welcome that if we need that kind of flexibility, as it could prevent real disruptions in our schools. Can you advance to the next slide, please? So here, just one more. There we go. Here, I'm going to start just kind of floating you into your budget book itself. So if you go to pages 24 through 26 of your budget book, we'll talk to you just a little bit about this aggregate pie chart. And first, just starting on the left side, that is our general fund. It is our largest, most important, and most flexible fund. This is where we fund most of the operations of schools. When we think of the things that schools need, when we think of, bus drivers, and we think of library books and the things that are part of schools, it is usually funded out of this yellow portion. If you look at the gray portion, what we want you to see there is that a subset of that is, so what you see there is, I'm sorry, I need to get my glasses. I'm that age now.
I have 3 pairs.
All right, back in business. What you'll see here is that we've got restricted, committed, or assigned funds. Inside of this, the most important funds for you to know about as part of this budget process are our grant funding. That's High School Success, the Student Investment Act, and then our federal funds. So Title I, IDEA, Title II, Title III. Those are amongst the most important blocks in this, this gray portion. The things that I want to just highlight for you here, you can see a little bit more if you go to page 30 and 35 of your budget book. But the key is that if you take the total amount in Gen Fund, which is about $690, and includes our beginning fund balance, so it's not a true $690, it's really $590. And you add to it our discretionary options in grants. And then we start to exclude the things that limit our discretion, like PERS. What we get down to is about 40% of this $1.148 billion budget is what we get to make decisions about. The remainder are things that we have very limited control over, like PERS. PERS is $125 million of our budget, and there's not a lot we can do to affect that. There's a lot of debt service in here. It's the funding that pays for our capital bonds, for example. There's nothing we can do with debt service. It just really exists as an expense. So I think the bottom line here is, yes, it is $1.148 billion, and that is a big number. And within it, we work with a surprisingly small subset to make active discretionary decisions about what we can do in our schools for our staff, students, and community. Okay, can you advance to the next slide, please? So here what you'll see is all funds, and in it, you'll see that there is a difference of about $25 million, a positive $25 million difference from all funds from last year. Now, this, of course, includes, it nets out at 25 with some pluses and some minuses. It includes a little bit of an increase in anticipated property tax revenue. It anticipates an increase in the state school fund based on the governor's recommended budget. And it also includes decreases from the federal side. You no doubt remember that we lost ESSER as a funding source. And so when you net all of those things out, we're looking at about $25 million in additional all-fund revenue for the 25-26 school year. Again, that isn't all money that we have total discretion over, though, because it reflects the aggregate of a lot of funding sources, some of which have significant restrictions. Okay, next slide. So here, what you see is the next version of the slide you just looked at for Q3 of our current fiscal year. And just as kind of a reset around this to make sure we're calibrated, the black line is the ending fund balance. It's on a different axis, so I know it's a little visually confusing, but what you'll see is it over the 21, 22 through 26 period. And then the blue line that you see are anticipated revenue based on the governor's recommended budget of 11.4. And then you see our expense line. Much of what we talk about next is going to be focused on the slope of the increase of the expense line, particularly relative to the revenue line. On the revenue front, I do want to be clear about the assumptions, which are also part of your budget book. We're budgeting on 11.4, which is the governor's recommended budget. But there are still a few hands to play within the session, and there could be changes. The 11.4 could soften. We don't really know. It also, other things could happen. You know, there could be additional funding. So we will make modifications as we go. If more money shows up than we have budgeted, well, we'll handle it technically and through the budget process. The message that I must deliver to you is that more money does not allow us to hire more people and spend more on personnel because of the problems that we're seeing in the trajectory here. What more money does is give us a fighting chance of getting through this full biennium without a major reduction. And what I ask of our team and what I offer to the Budget Committee is that we are not actually building merely the FY26 budget. What we are building is the trajectory through 27 to get through the biennium, because we do not want to end up high-centered in the biennium. There will be few solutions for us if that happens. So a couple of things here that I want to point out before we take a deeper dive. First, you'll see that ending fund balance start to fall as the gap opens up. You'll remember from last year, if you were with us, that kind of makes sense, because if you're spending more than you're getting and you're still paying all of your bills, it's coming from somewhere. And the place that it's coming from is our ending fund balance. It's our reserve. But I also want to remind you that last year, we left 27 million in, and we closed it with vacancy savings and careful cost containment. So this number right here that you see left in, I believe it's $46 million in a budgeted expense to revenue gap, is a accurate way of presenting a budget, but it is not a complete view of what we might expect by the end of the year, when the real factors that govern a school district have had a chance to play out on our expense line. The biggest thing that happens is that despite our extreme efforts, we always run a vacancy rate. You know, we have thousands of staff, and at any given time, some of those seats are empty. While they're empty, we are accumulating savings from those vacancies. And we have been running about a 3.5% vacancy savings rate. That vacancy savings rate accounts for about 18 to 19 million of the 27 that we saved this year. While we do everything we can to fill those seats, there isn't a reason right now to actively suspect that our vacancy rate will be much lower next year. And that means that that gap will close through vacancy savings. We don't know exactly how much it will close, but we know it will close some. finally, if we spent every cent that was appropriated to us through the budgeting process, we would end up with a $53 million ending fund balance, which is within, but on the low side of policy targets. That should be an alarming number to everyone in the room. 53 million should be an alarming number. It is too low for a system of our size. But again, the vacancy savings and other cost containment measures are going to push that number up to something that I think will be a little healthier. I can't predict now exactly what the closure rate will be, but I feel confident in saying that we can use this year as an approximate guide. So of 46, we could hope to close about 25 of that through measures that don't require active reduction. I would, however, like to, although we can't present it to you because it has too many as yet untested assumptions, if you look at the slope of the expense line and imagine that you just draw it out one more year and you don't change the slope, you can see the problem we're headed for in 27. It's the extreme gap and the extreme slope that we're going to spend some time on tonight. Okay, can you advance to the next slide? So just some basics here then to restate what you saw in that graph. We are projecting a beginning fund balance of 99 million, which is about 14%. We are expecting approximately $80 million in biennial revenue, and I'll actually just modify that slightly as our share of the enrollment has become more clear. I think it's going to be closer to 76 than 80. These are things that we don't know exactly until all of the details are released, but we are building on this 76 to 80 rate. We did not budget for any changes in federal funds for this coming school year. And that has always been a tricky choice. Some school systems have budgeted for an anticipated reduction. Some have not. We didn't, because to do so in our system would have caused quite a lot of alarm within our schools. And we felt that it was not worth the disruption to guess about a reduction. At this point, that feels like it's panning out. We may end up with something in the range of $1 million in federal funding loss. Within the scope of this budget, we can absorb that. Most of the discussion that's being had right now is actually about the next year federal fiscal year budget, so our 26-27 budget. And that is where the bulk of the significant uncertainty lies. It's far too early for us to try to anticipate any of that through the budgeting process we're doing now. On the expense side, we want to be clear with you that the key issue that we're facing right now is about a 9% rate of increase in our personnel expenses. And I will talk you through that in quite a bit more detail in a moment. But this is the most significant factor facing Salem-Keizer, and I will be bold enough to say I think our neighboring districts are encountering a very similar phenomenon. You will see that we're coming to you with a 66 net FTE increase. And I know that that feels counterintuitive right now. And we will talk you through some of the details. Over 80% of that 66 are school-based staff, and almost all of them are supporting behavior and special education, two areas that we have a lot of need in our system. And we are making a calculated investment to stabilize those two areas, and especially kids with some pretty extreme behavioral needs, and they need the kind of skilled clinical intervention that we don't currently have staffing to provide. And so then if you take kind of all of these things in aggregate, what you're looking at is this $46 million gap between budgeted expenses and anticipated revenue. I know I'm doing a lot here. I'm just going to pause and do a process check. I want to encourage you guys to write down all of your questions. I'm going to run through the whole presentation because I think some of them will get answered along the way, but we will make sure to gather your questions at the end. All right, we're going to go deeper into details here, and the most important way we're going to go into details is to talk about that 9%. So first, you guys might remember this from last year. We recolored it because it became known as the cigarette chart. I don't know who all, somebody in this room dubbed it, and then it stuck. But out of deference to our strong anti-tobacco position as a school district, we now have maroon and gray. There are a few important things to know about this. So first, the black line is the enrollment line, and you'll see our anticipated enrollment loss of about 700 kids between this and next school year. The second thing that you will notice is that although there were little ebbs and flows, mostly what you see is an incremental increase in staffing at the same time that we are incrementally losing students. This is a statewide phenomenon. Every system doesn't look exactly the same, but this phenomenon of fewer kids, more adults is, I think, present in nearly every district and certainly in stark aggregate across all K-12 systems. There are a number of reasons for that, and we can talk about it in greater detail if you wish. On this one, as we talk about enrollment loss, there's a few things I want to do, but first, I do want to send you to page 15 of your budget book, where you'll find some information about our enrollment projections. I will not tend to work specifically from the book because I have comments that I want to add, but I offer these as just a way to kind of get you oriented to some of the key sections. On the enrollment loss front, there are a lot of people with conflicting and equally strongly held hypotheses about what's going on with enrollment loss. And I cannot tell you why. I can tell you that many people think they know why, and a lot of the arguments are convincing, but there hasn't been a large-scale study of this for our district or for our state that dives into the actual cause. Some things I can tell you inside of our projections includes 1,500 registered homeschoolers, and that number changes all the time, but it is going up. It also includes 1,625 virtual charter students, and that number too is climbing. The biggest contributor to us, in truth, is the same as it is for most of Oregon, which is declining birth rate. And declining birth rate is, right now, it's about 3,000, our most recent number, which is 22-23, is about 3,000 live births. The thing to know as you're imagining, though, is this declining birth rate compounds. So it's not just that your pre-K intake goes down. You have fewer pre-Ks going to K, and then you have fewer Ks going to 1. This is the largest statistical contributor. And then the final one is that we are capturing about 75% of our kindergartners, school-age kindergartners. And I don't think we know enough about where the other kids are going. I offer this just to say there are a lot of important questions about why our kids are not entering our system. And they have educational implications, they have community implications, and most importantly for tonight, they have economic implications. On the staffing side, I think I can only say that this is the same thing I've shared with every legislator that is asked. If you walk into any one of our schools, they do not feel overstaffed. They feel like people who are barely holding things together. I've done 100 school visits this year, and I have yet to move into any space where I look around and I'm like, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of people in here. And this is a function of schools being asked to do far more than we are actually staffed to do. And so we keep hiring people to do the things, even though we are not funded for those services. This year, you're going to see a budget that includes $53 million in mental and behavioral health services. That number grows every year. Every year, I could stand before you and say this is a historic investment. It's up from, I believe, 47 last year. Because we have a lot of kids in clinical crisis, and they need and deserve services that it appears we are the only provider to offer. There is a dearth of other options. So these are the ways that we find ourselves in a situation where we're hiring more people and serving a broader range of needs, but with a funding model that really isn't designed for us to be paying for people in all of those service areas. On page 16 of your budget book, you'll see some information about class size ratio. Actually, it looks like, did I say you to the right page? Give me 1 second. Page 16, yes. These are the ratios that we operate with. And you'll remember last year, because we were deep into a licensed bargain, we were talking about ratios a lot. And we've worked really hard collaboratively with labor to try to live into these ratios. And on a whole, I think we have made a lot of progress together. We meet jointly on it, we manage the data together, we supplement, and these ratios are still high. There's no question about that. Changing these ratios, though, will require so many people that we do not have the money to pay for right now. And this is where we find ourselves in a stark, and I would argue deeply inequitable relationship to districts with local option levies. Portland Public Schools has $100 million a year that they use to keep their ratios lower than this. Beaverton has got, I believe it's about $60 million a year in local option levy, and they use it to keep their ratios lower. We have no local option levy revenue. I want to give you a few kind of benchmark statistics for ratio this year. So first, we have about 615 elementary classrooms, and 15% of those are over 30. In those cases, we're supplementing with instructional assistants, but the number is still over 30. We have 44% that are under 24. And we have 48% that are between 25 and 29. We have supplemented with additional staff throughout the year in partnership with labor to address places that are over ratio, and we're continuing to monitor it together. If we had the means to address this, we would. I don't have any idea how we would do it right now. Okay, so going back to this slide, if you can advance to the next one. Of all of the information we're bringing you tonight, this is the one that I am most concerned about. What you see in this graph is single year revenue in our general fund, which is where we fund the vast majority of our school expenses. And we are going to be budgeted at 96% people. I would say that a best practice benchmark is closer to about 85. There's a few just kind of frames of reference here that I think help explain how we are in this situation. The first is the rate of our personnel increases. I don't know how we compare to other districts. I'm guessing we're very similar in the rate of increase. The rate of the increase there is driven by a number of features. One is PERS increases. Another is COLAs for all of our personnel. STEP increases, which about 55% of our workforce get annually. And then the cost of benefits, keeps going up. So those come together, stack on top of each other, and have a year-over-year compounding effect. Now that we're at 96%, there's almost nowhere left to go. And this is why when I say we're building a budget for 27, not for 26, this is what I mean. And when I say that if we receive additional unbudgeted revenue through this session, we have to be so disciplined and smart, because if we hire more people, we're going to keep this number at 96, and 27 is going to be even worse. This is why it's hard to be a budget committee member right now. Another thing that I want to offer you here is that you'll see over the years that there's this gap between our budgeted expenses and our actual expenses. So you can, like, let's look at last year. Our budgeted expenses in personnel were 93%. Our actuals came in about 85. That's where we would like to be. But the gap in that line has been supplemented over years, primarily, but not exclusively, primarily by ESSER. Now that ESSER is gone, there are no more adjustments that get made to the benefit of the general fund. And so you see it's down to 3 now. Now we're down to just vacancy savings, because that's what's left. This should be a cause for great alarm. And I do want to be perfectly clear in this slide and in this presentation, we are bringing you a budget that is in policy targets. I don't know that we can do that next year. Sorry, I'm a year behind. We are bringing you a budget that's in policy targets for next year, FY26. I don't know that we can do that for 27. I see a path for us, but it is thin, and it's reliant on a lot of things that may or may not come to pass. But I know that our system needs more years of stability. It needs more years of thoughtful resource investment. It needs more support in classrooms and schools. And that's what makes that path so narrow. Okay, on this one, if you go to page 29 of your budget book, it's just one of many places that you can see this. So if you look at the very bottom right corner of page 29, this is a fund summary, and you'll see at the bottom salaries and associated payroll costs for all funds. And you can see how all of these funds are stacking up, and you can also see change over time. There is, if I remember correctly, there's a $52 million increase between last year and this year in anticipated personnel expenses. Well, budgeted personnel expenses. Another frame of reference that you can see more clearly in this page is between 23-24 and 24-25, we cut 400 FTE. Our personnel expenses still went up. It just gives you a frame of reference for how fast things are growing. Okay, so can we move to the next slide? Oh, this is just coming back to it again. So now what we just did is unpack some of the reasons that sit inside the slope of that expense line. Next slide. So some information about us by numbers. This was a subject of significant discussion last year, and again, just to kind of get in front of it, we're trying to come more prepared. Some things for you guys to know here. This is presented in FTE, which is our best measure. It's full-time equivalent. It's not the same as positions. It's FTE. It's the way that we manage all aspects of our human resource data system. You'll see that we're pretty evenly split between classified and licensed. And you'll see that we are about 3.5% administrators. Of those administrators, about 105 of them or so are school-based administrators. District administrators, defined as people who have supervisory responsibilities in the district office, are about 1.1% of the workforce. We are as thin as I ever see in a district. And in the 66 FTE recommended increases that we're bringing you, you're going to see reinstatements of school-based positions mostly that we think are essential right now, but you're going to see some district positions too, because we cannot function with the gaps we have. And we'll walk you through some of those details. I think that's it for this page. So now we're getting close to the end of the speaking portion, which I'm sure I and you are relieved about. We are grateful for the board's support in the 2-year plan, and I am very pleased to share with you that we built our biennial budget alongside the 2-year plan. The reason this matters is that we built a budget that we built a plan that we believe we can afford with the anticipated revenue before us. I want to walk you through just a few of the key investments that align to that plan. We could do this exhaustively. I'm just giving you some highlights. Next slide. First, in the area of strengthening foundational systems, you'll see that there's a 4 FTE increase dedicated to 2 areas, human resource and data functions. And this is because right now we actually are very short on recruitment. It is deeply self-defeating for the 2nd largest employer in the Salem-Keizer area to not have enough recruitment capacity. It impairs the whole system. We need to be able to recruit early, recruit well, and recruit in shortage areas. And we do not have the capacity to do it. And then we have talked as a board greatly about data. We need a data engineer, and we need support around data systems and data visualization and provisioning for our schools. If we are going to ask them to pay attention to outcomes, we need to give them a way to see outcomes, and they need to have confidence that the data that they are using is accurate. This is a very, very thin investment in data, given the important role it is going to play in our system, and also what is going to be asked of us from the state. One of the areas of this plan that I'm very happy about is it gives us a chance to get in front of the accountability bill, which will pass. And it will ask of us the things that we've started and much more. Our schools deserve it, and our staff deserve it. You will also see that it includes, this is not a new investment, this is a continuation of FTE in school safety. Those are our safety specialists who are in and out in schools every day. And it also includes a technical FTE increase there. That is because we liquidated a third-party contract, which was more expensive, and took that money and hired our own people, which we were able to train ourselves. It's actually a win-win for us, but it's showing up as an FTE increase, despite the fact that it's really just swapping out contracted services for district-supported staff. Next slide. This is the student agents and wellness. This is the majority share of the additions you'll see in this budget. So going kind of item by item, there are, as a recommended, 11 FTE increase for behavior intervention trainers. These are specially trained people who are working in schools to help support behavior, but also to help support staff in learning how to support behavior. These are classified staff. You will see that there are staff that are going to support a new behavioral health center at Straub Middle School. This is a significant expansion of our current capacity to support kids who are in an escalated Tier 3 situation. These are mostly elementary students, and they definitely need intensive therapeutic support and safe small spaces. The Straub expansion allows us to, I think, increase our capacity by more than 100%. And even that won't serve all of the kids who need behavioral health services, but the staffing is for that center. And then there's 12 FTE for our Grow Your Own Special Education Clinical Practicum. These are not people who will stay in this role forever. These are people who we hired into a clinical model. They work alongside certified teachers. They're enrolled in Western Oregon. When they complete their program, they become special education teachers in Salem-Keizer. It is the most extreme shortage area that we have. We have to start growing our own because we cannot keep working in an empty talent pool. So if you can imagine those positions, those are people who are moving through the FTE and into vacancies once they complete their certification program. And then continued aligned investments. I told you about the $53 million in mental and behavioral health services. And then in addition, there is about $118 million in special education services in the Gen Fund, plus another about $12 million in IDEA. And these are ethically required, morally required, and legally required services for students who need extra help. Okay, FY26, this is the academic excellence area. It's the third of our 3 priority areas. Here you're gonna see there are 10 FTE to support dual language expansion. This is part of our planned expansion. It happens every year. The reason that we have to continue hiring is as our footprint grows, we have to stay in front of the staffing needs for the growing footprint. In addition to the dual language staff, we also, those 10, we also have an expansion of English language learner certified teachers who are working in our classrooms with the largest percentage, or schools with the largest percentage of English learners. You will also see here 4 new elementary administrators. This is a response to many things, but if you are an elementary principal working in, say, a 400 or 500 student school, you are by yourself. Unfortunately, we had to eliminate the instructional mentors last year, which was the other person who helped develop PD, run data sessions, run professional learning communities. So they don't have that person anymore either, and it is an untenable leadership role to be by yourself in a building with that kind of complex and overlapping responsibility. These will split across our largest elementary schools to, they'll be shared across schools, and it'll help reduce the load. And then in continuing aligned investments, we'll be expanding our benchmark assessment. You guys have already started to see how much we're using STAR data to complement state assessment data. We get that 3 times a year, which we really need to be able to see growth. It is actually our only instrument to measure growth. The state assessment does not have that capability. And it is increasingly a tool to inform parents about how their students are advancing academically. It is a missing and essential portion of a comprehensive assessment system. And then we continue our investment in music and career and tech because it is amongst the things that make us great and very important to our students, our families, and our community. Next slide. So these are some next steps in this process. You'll see the budget committee meetings, which I know you guys have held. May 14th is a big day for us, and also, I think, Catherine, you're probably also paying attention to May 14th. That's the revenue forecast. We'll know a lot more then about the moments, the fiscal moments that we're moving through. Then you'll see some target dates for legislative action and the passage of the budget, board adoption, and then by no later than June 30th, we must have an adopted budget to be able to spend money on July 1st. As I close out on this and finally turn it over to the question portion, I do want to say that I think that we have this tremendous opportunity, but also this tremendous responsibility in front of us to think about the well-being of our district, not just next year, but in the years to come. We have given ourselves a chance to get in front of this trajectory. And it is not going to be easy, but we can do it if we're intentional and if we're methodical and if we use the time that we bought ourselves. We are not in a crisis scramble here. And that is a privilege because I see my colleagues who are. But if we take this time and we coast when we can see the trajectory, instead of preparing to think about the steps that manage it, we will be in a crisis scramble. And that is hard on schools, and it is hard on staff. It is very hard on kids. Okay, with that, I am going to turn it over to questions. And Chrissy, I believe you'll be managing the question portion. As we tee this up, I'm going to just say that we'll be doing two things tonight. The first is, if we have answers, we're going to answer them now. More likely, we're going to take detailed notes and come back to you with answers. If we cannot answer it now, the process described here is that the committee needs to vote to approve the basically handoff of the question to the staff. And that is there just to manage volume for us. Some questions only take us 10 minutes. Some take us 10 hours. And we need to make sure that if we're going to spend significant time, it is the will of the committee that it is worth the amount of time that it may take us as part of the specific work you're doing in this budget. So with that, I will hand it over to Director Hudson and start welcoming in questions.
All right. You go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Superintendent Castaneda. I really appreciate the last part of your presentation where you aligned the changes. You know, I can start. Before, we used to talk about revenue, but when it comes to expense, we couldn't kind of figure it out how it was connected. My hope is at some stage we'll have a student-based budgeting, which will kind of track the money that along with the child, because that's how we kind of close the equity ladder that this child has to go. The dollar has to follow the child. Now, but that's not the question. That's a good step you have taken. I think I have a question. I know there are uncertainties at the federal level, and we don't know the budget. The cost of living is going up. We are in the midst of a bargaining with the union, just like, I mean, technically bargaining is always board bargaining with the union. In this case, we kind of delegated it to you, so it's ultimately our responsibility. So to fulfill that responsibility, I would like to know, with all these things, making sure our end fund balance is protected at or above the policy, just to make sure we don't get into trouble like the past. How do we approach this? Because sometimes there is a need for, you know, the cost of living, everything, teachers need to be paid, and then trying to balance it with what is the amount of money we actually have. Even 99 million or even 53 million kind of gives me worry, because we need, from what I learned the last time, about $40 million a month to cut the payroll. That's like a little bit over a month and 1 week of money we'll probably end up with. So I'm really wanting to know how you plan to approach this. And as a board, what do we take a decision in terms of what's the bottom line and how do we bargain? Do you mind kind of sharing now or during one of the following sessions?
I can share some now, and then we might need to come back. So you find yourself at a moment where two processes are overlapping. This actually didn't happen to you last year because we concluded the bargain right before the budget. And so we brought certainty into the budgeting process as it related to compensation. We are right now, literally, most of our team is not here because they are at a bargaining session with SKIA right now. It's our 7th session with them. We've been bargaining since February. I, of course, don't know how that will play out. There are some things I can answer for you now, though. The budget you see here is based on our, excuse me, our opening offer to the licensed association, which is a 3% COLA. And I believe it was a $50 increase in insurance contributions. While I don't know where it will land, I think we can all agree it's not going to land at 3. That was the opening offer. The work that we're going to have to do to track the progress of that bargain is really important fiscal management, but it is also relational management. And making sure that to the degree that it is on our reach, we are giving our staff the time to think through the realities of the situation the district finds itself in, Do we want to reduce class size? Yes. Do we want to pay everyone more? Yes. Are we given the money to do it, given the expenses that are already locked in? No. And so it's going to be careful messaging and careful management. What you see here is 3%. And so when I talk about something like a 9% increase in personnel costs, in the back of my mind, I know it's not 9 either. It's going to be higher than 9 because the bargain is going to land higher than 3. What I cannot do, because I don't have the information and I can't do it by law, is talk about the bargaining parameters in public session. But I can give you some frames of reference. Our opening proposal, I believe, was right around 25 million or so across 2 years in compensation. I can, maybe you guys can grab the exact number, but it was around that. The licensed opening proposal was about 105 million. So you can see that the gap that sits between us is still great. We will close it a step at a time. But our work in closing it has got to be predicated on, to the degree possible, a shared understanding and confidence in the budget that we're presenting today is an accurate representation of our opportunities and our limitations. And unfortunately, we face more limitation than opportunity when it comes to the pressures and demands of a bargaining table.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have, you don't want like, because we just got these today, you don't want like the big questions, do you, until like we have a chance to kind of go through them?
We know you are going to want to go through in detail. I think if there's a conceptual question that's on your mind, we would like to grab those because
Okay.
one, it gives us a chance to clarify them with you, and two, it gives us more time to research them.
Okay. I do have two, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, all of them.
And I just want to thank you for your acknowledgement. This is heavy, even though we're not cutting this year. It is very likely not going to be the same next year. And so the decisions we make this year are really important to how bad it's going to be, I think, the ensuing year. So I think it's great that the district is setting that up because it is true. And I also want to point out that this budget committee is a very, very important process of a democratic process. It's an important aspect. This is the chance, by law, by statute, ORS 294, where people taxpayers can get insight into what's happening with this budget. It's not a rubber stamp. It's a good chance for you to ask the questions that you know that your neighbors and your teachers and your coworkers have about the Salem-Keizer school budget. So I just really want to put that out there about what an important work we're doing and to look into this. With that in mind, my first question is, Oregon's not doing well with education. Second worst in the country, this is the national school scorecard, second worst in the country for math. We're tied third worst in the country for reading. Oregon's fifth graders posted bottom of the barrel for math scores that were measurably worse than they were in 45 other states. We're not doing well. And I think that at the state level, there's a panic of what are we going to do to get to our kids? Because what we're investing is not nothing. It's $1.1 billion. And I know that we have a cost of living thing, and I get that. But we are middle of the line in states when it comes to investing, what the bottom of the barrel when it comes to performance. So something isn't right. And I think a lot of that is at the state to figure out. But with that in mind, surely that I know that sent shockwaves through the state. When it sent shockwaves to the Salem-Keizer school district, what's the plan and how is it reflected in this budget?
I'm going to be able to answer portions of that, and then I might need to ask clarifying questions to make sure that we're answering it in the way that you intend. So while that data did send shockwaves through the state, and especially elected officials, I'm going to ask for the board to correct me if you feel this is wrong, but We had been reviewing that data for a full year by the time there was a panic at the state level over it. And it's because this board had actually acted a full year in advance and set extremely clear expectations about growth in most of the areas you described and the process that we are using to achieve that growth. Whether it was a panic or whether it was a known fact, I think there is radical agreement in the room that those numbers are of great concern and of partial embarrassment to the state. The Salem-Keizer, I didn't bring it, but the 2-year plan that we built is designed to answer that question, and which is why I'm so pleased to have a 2-year plan developed in tandem with the biennial budget, because that is what we asked ourselves over and over through the course of it. So the key, I think the best way for me to answer it is to go back to, we can't really show slides. Can we show slides again? We'll go quickly back through a few of the slides, and I'll go a little bit deeper into expenses. Investments. First is that we are bargaining right now a contract that we hope will achieve a thoughtful and artful balance, but also includes professional learning time for our staff, because we have incredible staff, but we have not gotten the opportunity to work with them to invest in their skill and growth, especially in a few key areas that we know are central to this. The science of reading is now such a tired phrase, and it is so prevalent. But that doesn't mean that the skill is easy. It is actually an incredibly difficult thing to teach children to read. And we have a portion of our staff already well on their way or experts at it. We have a large portion that haven't gotten the training they need yet. And so there is an effort to bring professional learning alongside our other work. We are making significant investments in curriculum, and the board has heard about this extensively. I will be more brief here. Salem-Keizer is very behind in the adoption of core curriculum. I will give you an example. We adopted high school ELA this year. It has been decades. I am told, and I believe it to be true, that it is 30 years since our high school ELA staff have had common high-quality curriculum. It is possible to be a great teacher without high-quality curriculum. It's hard, but it's possible. What is not possible is to run 615 elementary classrooms that are equally good, that are equally grounded in research, that are equally supported for every child without common high-quality curriculum, and curriculum is expensive. In this budget, you'll see, I believe it's a $5 million asset transfer to a curriculum fund, because we have got to get in front of the current and the pending curriculum investments. The biggest one that's coming is in FY27, and it's the elementary ELA curriculum. That could easily be $12 to $15 million. And I don't believe it is controversial, but I will accept that not everyone agrees. To teach kids to read, we need evidence-based curriculum that emphasizes phonics, that teaches teachers how to teach kids incrementally as they move through, and every one of our children need access to it. It will make a difference. And it requires a lot of work to align resources, especially time and energy. The $12 to $15 million is a lot, but you know what's harder? It's harder to ask teachers to do something new right now, because it is really hard to be a teacher. And if we're saying also we need you to learn a new curriculum, we need to be providing thoughtful amounts of time and support in order to do it. What is not in this budget that I wish was is the reinstatement of the instructional mentors. These are our most skilled master teachers and excellent coaches. They are a big part of what would raise this academic excellence priority and student results. And we cannot afford to reinstate instructional mentors right now. We do not have the money for it. So it is benchmark assessments, time, thoughtfully created and well presented for teachers to learn and collaborate, curriculum investment, and then it is a minimal investment, but data engineers and data systems to tell us if we're doing the work we said we were doing. The three questions that we are relentlessly asking ourselves: are we doing what we said we were going to do? How is it going? Is it having the impact we intended? You cannot answer the last two questions without data systems. They are a requisite part of understanding whether we are doing our jobs as system leaders. So that is a more extemporaneous answer. Let me pause there and ask you, from a more technical perspective, what would fully answer that question for you, or what was missing or incomplete in what I offered?
It was a great explanation. I just want to clarify that that 5 million is to get curriculum that works, that, you know, teaches our kids to read, teaches them to write. That is what that 5 million is. Is that correct?
It's a portion of a transfer, yes.
What's a portion?
Well, so you used the example of reading. $5 million would buy 1/3 of the district's reading curriculum.
Okay.
So when I say it's a portion, I mean we are actively saving into that transfer fund.
I see. But
because
we haven't acquired it yet.
No, the adoption will happen next year.
Go ahead, Dr. Chandra.
So I was kind of listening to your presentation, and you know, I truly believe that after COVID and the school closures, there has been a, you know, one of the important areas I was thinking we should be focusing to improve the excellence in education, safety, attendance, would be family engagement. It's also required by Title I. About 1% of that Title I money should be spent on family education. Historically, we were just receiving Title I money, but it is very hard from reading the budget what percentage actually went to family engagement. But pretty much everybody has been affected after COVID and the school closure. So, and again, aligning with these goals, is there a place where I can find how we are going to spend money on family engagement, especially with all the families have gone through their own challenges in 130 different communities, and especially kind of using a dual capacity framework? How do we get our teachers to learn how to engage the family using some best practice and or early childhood models? Because I think that's an area I believe we can do. Hopefully that will also help bring down some of the challenges we are facing. So where would I find, or how much we will be spending? And with the federal government with making all these changes, sometimes it's really hard but important to protect that.
It's an excellent question. And so if you go to page 27 and 28 of your budget book, this will be disappointing because I'm going to show you why the budget book doesn't have the answer, and then we'll talk about how to get you an answer. What you'll see here is that these are the official categories, the coding areas, which are defined by the state. And then there's finer grain details underneath this. So you'll see that it falls into instruction, support, services, acquisition. See those big categories? What doesn't exist, and Christy and I, like we had talked about this last year too, is the way to just pull data that isn't coded inherently as, for example, family engagement. So you won't be able to, I can't turn to a page in the budget book and say, here is the section about family engagement. What I can do is talk with you about our most important investment in that area, and we can bring you back information that I think helps advance the question, but it still may be an incomplete or unsatisfactory answer. Across our system, we have community resource specialists and we have CSOCs, and they do endless work engaging families. It is, I would say, one of the most important services they offer. They are culturally specific, linguistically specific, and have very close and trusting relationships with families. And what matters greatly about some of them is they are families that may have a natural mistrust of the school system, but they are willing to trust somebody who is building that kind of relationship. So what we can do is bring you in the next meeting information about our total investment in community resource specialists and CSOCs. And I don't know that that will be a complete answer to the vision you're looking for, because you've been a board member for a long time, and so you know the work they do and that they exist. You're right, 1% of Title I by regulation has to be dedicated to family engagement, and that happens mostly through schools who run extensive nights. Most of you have been in literacy nights and, family events. There's, all sorts of things that are happening inside schools. If it's a title school, there's a very good chance it's being paid for with title funding.
So can I ask a follow-up question, Chair?
Yes. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much for explaining that. I mean, it is a challenging area, no doubt about it, because that's how we have been doing historically. The scale of the problem has kind of ballooned out of proportion, that even though they are not Title I schools, nevertheless, we see challenges everywhere. And, sometimes our Salem-Keizer coalition members keep coming, and, they're doing an amazing job in trying to, especially with the little children, they're trying to reach out and things like that. I don't know, we do have some pockets of community, like the Pacific Islander, for example. So they may have one or two CSOCs who may speak one language, but they have like so many languages. Samoans can't understand martialism, they can't understand Chukis. So language is only one part of the piece of the puzzle. But if there is a way part of your training can be on essentially looking at it in terms of a dual capacity where everybody gets part of their training to reach families, so no family is left out. I'm just thinking as it may be a conceptual question at this point in time, but if that can be built in, then every teacher, every staff is like a dual capacity. They know how to kind of connect. I believe maybe their training, teachers' training allows that. I don't know the answer. But the population in our city has certainly changed.
Yes.
And after the COVID and school closure, the needs are completely different from what anyone could imagine. So I think part of the investment in terms of training, there could be like just like we did with QPR for all staff members. That's an example of what we did. And we kind of built it, all 5,000 got a QPR training for suicide prevention. Is there a similar way of using a dual capacity model of training everybody how to connect with the families, how to relate to the families, so everybody can start thinking in terms of welcoming family, or every family can feel they are being engaged in different capacity. It's not that everybody is going to sit in a committee. That's not what I mean. But every family loves their children, and they would like to understand how the education works, how does the curriculum work, how can they be ahead of what is being taught. That's what I'm thinking in terms. It is more important as our budget challenges, federal changes, dollars are going to be tight. Perhaps the family can also play a role in making sure that the educational area don't get missed.
Well, I think in terms of answering the strictly budget portions of this, because some are important conceptual questions. On the budget side, without asking for any committee action, one of the follow-ups we can do is bring data on CRS's, CSOCs, and the Title I set aside for family engagement, and some examples of that, so that you have some visibility into what's already happening. On the professional learning side, I don't think that's strictly a budget issue. I think it is a way to prioritize time and resource investment once the time has been purchased through the budgeting process. And as anyone who walks through, is connected to, is married to teachers knows, time is the most precious thing right now. And that is very much part of what, no doubt, our colleagues are bargaining at this very moment.
Thank you. So Jean Jetan has a question, and then there's an interest in a 10-minute break after. So everyone, thank you. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. I'm just trying to get my
All right.
camera.
Good job. Thanks. Good.
Good. Just one question, wonderful budget message, by the way, a great summary of the health of what our district is going through. I do want to just mention, we just received the budget for 2025, 2026. On page 29, I do want to ask, according to the PBAM, the Program Budgeting and the Accounting Manual, your function of 6,000 for contingency, is that your reserves for the next fiscal year? Is that dollar amount of the 53 million? Or is that for planning through the current fiscal year, which would be for 25, 26?
Well, you are going to see me my absolute most honest. I have worked so hard to learn every possible portion of this budget, and there is something about the difference between reserves and contingency that escapes me. Sarah has tried to teach me like 5 times. I'm not even going to try, Jean. I'm just going to say, can we come back and answer that question? Because somebody is going to have to teach me for like the 12th time how these are different, how they relate to each other, and therefore the answer to your question. I can tell you that the $99 million ending fund balance that we are projecting this year and the 53 against budget expenses for next year is inclusive of contingency. It is not in addition to contingency.
Follow-up, is that fine, Chair?
Absolutely.
Right. This is a different question, but it's more of a piggyback to what Kathy is mentioning, and it would be something that I'll be following and looking in the budget. And basically what we'll be I'm looking for is you presented that there's a substantial investment in those behavioral and the clinical supports, which is very vital, I believe. But I'm trying to see how the district is balancing those needs with ensuring that strong academic outcomes that Kathy mentions, particularly in the areas in the reading and the math and the science performances. I just want to see how that equity, that balance is going to look like.
We'll wait for you to work through the book and bring more specific questions. I'll predict a few things that will perhaps obscure or frustrate your efforts. In the way that this budget is presented, it will be a little bit hard to separate some of these things. So, for example, instruction and support, some of the largest categories that you'll find in this budget book, is sometimes inclusive of core content teachers, is sometimes inclusive of people who are providing supports for students with additional special education or behavioral needs. So you'll find that they're a little bit commingled. In terms of broader balance, I think a few things I can add that maybe add context is that if we don't get a handle on behavior, it is very hard to provide excellent core instruction, because we do have classrooms who are being, that are being persistently and significantly disrupted by kids with needs that are more extreme than that teacher can meet. And so the question you're asking about balance is one that teachers are struggling with every day, and saying to us, if you can't help us with behavior, it's really hard for us to get to the basics that is why I do this work and what makes it feel so rewarding. And that's why you see an outsized investment, and of the 66 FTE, the majority of the people and the money are spent in the 2 areas that we believe it is most urgent to stabilize, so that we can keep getting to core tier 1 instruction done well.
Okay, if we can start a 10-minute break and maybe reconvene about 7:45, sound good with everyone? Thank you so much.
Oh, bio break.
Thank you so much. I don't think he got it. Does he see him? It's not on air yet. Oh, there we go. Thanks. All right. So we still had some leftover questions and folks that hadn't had a chance to ask. Just so if it's new to anyone, you feel comfortable, you're welcome to just kind of raise your hand. You can let us know, and then we'll make sure we try to get in order. So ask away. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do I get to go first?
You may go. You asked.
Thanks for your presentation, Superintendent. I took some questions. One thing I thought I heard is, what other alternatives are there for providing services to clinical behavior challenges? I think you mentioned that there were other alternatives. I just wanted to know what those were.
Well, I'm going to take a minute to just be a little bit more precise about what I mean when I say alternatives, because there's a lot that our skilled staff can do. But when we are talking about students who have experienced maybe extreme or persistent trauma, students with persistent challenges in regulating their own behavior, and in some cases students with psychiatric conditions, they can reach a point that are beyond the skill of our teachers and social workers and behavior experts. It's a small percentage of the population, but they can have a big impact in the community that they're in and the schools in which they operate. For alternatives for students that are at that level of acuity, we have inside our system first, we have Meadowlark, which you might remember we opened last year. It has been running all year, has been very successful, and it doesn't have a lot of slots in it, so we keep it full and kids are moving through it. That is a clinical day treatment program where we are partnered with a clinical provider, an expert in pediatric and children's psychiatric needs. And we partner to provide educational services alongside therapeutic services. We have our behavioral health center, which will be opening in an expanded form in Straub. Those are specially designed small spaces with specially trained staff and a very high, or I guess really low ratio of adults to students, because the students that we serve there need intensive support of a variety of types. That's what we have, and it does not meet our students' needs. Outside of that, there are really two main things that can happen. There are outpatient services and there are inpatient residential services. And there are none in the Mid-Willamette Valley. So for our students to access those, one, they need to be eligible and accepted. There needs to be an opening that there never is, and they need to travel to areas that are further than is practical for most of our students. The Portland metro area has some of these. I want to pause there because Olga Cobb, who is our deputy superintendent in charge of this priority, behavioral health, has been doing some intensive work in this area, and I just want to see if there's anything you want to add around availability or correct if I got anything wrong.
I think our challenge, just to add to what Superintendent shared, is the lack of spots to support the number of students that have that high need and that are in our general education classrooms or even in our special education settings. And so we are always, as you saw and as you heard in the budget meeting, the highest investment this year is around behaviors and special education, because we need to provide those resources and supports, not only for the students who need it, but also for the students that share the classrooms and the spaces with them, so that everyone has a good opportunity to learn at the level that they are capable of learning. So
this is, I think, the thing that's the most objectively unfair for kids about the services in this area. And Director Chandragiri is a personal expert in this area. It's your area of practice. But you can imagine how scared, concerned, and in some cases desperate parents are for placements that don't exist. And we always keep our doors open. So we become the placement when no placements exist. And usually no placements exist for the students that need and deserve them.
Alrighty, Karina.
Thank you. I think this kind of feeds into it, but I'd love to, and you mentioned at the top of your budget message, Superintendent, around how licensed staff there's been that collaboration to kind of inform the class size conversation, right? And so I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more and expand from that. And I know that we heard last year through the budget process and prior around the behavior incidents in classrooms and the staff requests for support. But question being, can you share a little bit more about how staff, both classified and licensed, voice and needs have been integrated into this budget?
Oh, specifically as it relates to the class size ratio committee or more generally?
More generally,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
I think you gave that as an example, but if
I
there
see.
are others that you would be willing or able to highlight, that would be really helpful. And again, just because, I mean, when you're talking about a budget that is 96% staff and we're kind of reviewing and an opportunity to review this, how is that their voice integrated into?
Yeah, the most significant answer to that is that we built the two-year plan alongside the budget, and we incorporated a significant amount of feedback into the two-year plan. So by logical extension, when we start funding the priorities of the plan, we're funding the priorities of, in some cases, the feedback we heard. I think that it is fair to say that an overwhelming demand from our staff is to stabilize behaviors. And we hear it in classified staff. I believe you all know, we have classified staff who are routinely injured while in their job. And they're injured by mostly elementary students who have behavioral needs that are greater than can be addressed in the classroom. I hope I am not out of line or my lane in saying that this is amongst the, if not the number one issue, one of the number one issues for our licensed and our classified staff, because they're all dealing with the challenges of not yet getting into a preventative intervention-based posture. I think if they were with us today, they would also reiterate that the incredible amount of work that has started and needs to continue in special education is highly related and complementary to that. And so when you see us trying to get in front of special education vacancies, when special education teacher roles are vacant, you can imagine how hard that is on a school system and on children. Then they're usually being educated by someone who is doing their best but may not have the skills or the training or the experience to be in the classroom they're trying to serve. So getting in front of that with the clinical pipeline is helping address a shortage area there. And then I think I will go on to say that the way that we have tried to enter bargaining really tries to recognize that our staff are looking for the tools, the skills, and the time to do their job better. And any of those by themselves is not enough. If you have the tools but you don't know how to use the tools, if you have the skills and the tools but you don't have the time to use them well, you still don't have the context for success. And so as we're working through the bargaining process, which is in part a budgeting process, we are really trying to find the balance there for staff. A specific answer to your question, though, is that we've engaged our labor partners, we've engaged our school leaders, we've engaged our so labor partners classified and licensed in the development of the two-year plan, multiple iterations of it where we discussed what needs to be true for this to be a success and tried to incorporate much of their thinking into the budget. And then also we've engaged families and school system leaders and school leaders.
Go ahead, William, thank you.
Superintendent, you mentioned in your presentation that you were facing declining enrollment. Is there a point where that will impact revenue, or is it each person?
If you go to page 15 of your budget book, this is an important question for really every budget committee to understand because enrollment is the driver of revenue in both the federal and the state side. And so if you look at this chart, you'll see from 2021-22 through 25-26, a few different views of enrollment. If you look at the furthest right column, that is the column that shows, based on our funding formula weights, how we are funded each year. And so you can see that number start to fall. As it falls, we get less federal aid and state aid.
Do you have, okay, she's got one, and then you, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Superintendent, for your message. I had a question regarding the curriculum adoption. As I remember you saying that we need to think in our trajectory of the biennium. That $5 million, is there a goal, an end goal that we need to make up to have enough to make up the deficit of what you said, 30 years of being behind in our curriculum? And does that exist within this biennium? And are we earmarking that for another? I know we don't plan past this year, but it's just something I'm curious about.
To continue with the idea of bringing you to the place where you can find this in the budget book, if you go to page 110, you'll see the asset replacement fund. Inside of asset replacement, you'll see the interfund transfers, and there you will see the $5 million for the curriculum transfer. We are trying to get in front of it, and if you look down below, you'll see the balance of the curriculum. So if you go down to the requirements, elementary instruction, and you'll start to see that balance creep up. That's the savings plan that we've been working towards, because we're not just implementing elementary ELA. We're also implementing across multiple grade spans, and all of them cost something. It's just that elementary ELA is the most expensive. To answer your question, we think that within this biennium, we're on track to meet our curriculum adoption expenses in the biennium, and the cost of the materials is only a portion of the cost of implementation. The real cost is giving teachers the time they need to internalize the lessons, to really know what they mean. And that is only partially accounted for because time is the most precious and the most expensive thing we have. But we are working hard on that.
And then you write, did you?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Is that it, though? Oh, and you too. Okay.
So I think what Jessica said is imperative, and I think that I'll just be very open and upfront with my goals for this session, which are, number one, to get that curriculum going, to get our kids. Obviously, it's not working. I've heard from several teachers that the curriculum is very difficult to work with. Let's go. Let's invest, and let's get it. And I think the second thing is I'm really disappointed by these student to FTE ratios. It does not matter. It does not matter what special program you got, what special grant you got, if a kid is walking into a classroom of 30. It just doesn't. And I think that education is as old as the hills, and it's as old as Aristotle sitting on a rock telling people stuff. So I think that we need to get back to basics in some form or some way and get to these 15% of elementary school classrooms that are of 30 and above somehow. So I don't care if it's one of them or two of them, we got to start going on that, because that is too much for one teacher. That is too much for one classified staff. They could be incredibly certified and ready to go. That's exhausting, 30 kids. That's exhausting. And so my thing is coming back to what I came to last year, and hopefully I get it this year, which is, this is a personnel budget. The question is it the right personnel?
I think that is the question we should all be grappling with. And the trade-offs that we have in front of us are classified staff who are supporting, largely supporting operations. So custodians, grounds maintenance, Special education, what they're called, special program instructional assistants, is the majority of our classified staff. They're supporting mostly students with disabilities and behavior.
Yeah.
And so, yes, and that's who that's the two sides of this scale. They are both essential.
Right.
There's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else to go because we're 96% people.
Right.
And most of the people are in schools serving kids. It is a painful and inexorable bind.
Right.
We're not alone, but that doesn't make it any better for us.
There is a place to go. I would like the administrative back office. It's people that wake up and work for Salem-Keizer and don't see children. So like, I know we had a definition issue last time. They are procurement staff, they're accounting staff, they're budget staff, they're HR staff. They report to headquarters or they work from home. I would like, so you have an org chart on page 12. I'd like the layer down. I'm officially requesting this. And let me tell you why it's important. This also hits the general fund. And the general fund is what funds teachers. The general fund is what funds classrooms. The general fund is what funds the people that students see. So the number of staff that report to these people and the budget node they are hitting. We should be able to connect their salaries to a budget. Now, I mean, full disclosure, in my life and state service, I have worked in procurement, I have worked in budget, I have dabbled in HR, and I have worked in accounting. So I fully understand that you need people to issue payroll, you need people to issue contracts, you need people, but the one thing I did get last was the amount of managers, and that felt heavy. I have worked with several state agencies. There were a lot of HR, I think there was like 7 HR directors and managers. So I would like the org chart, I would like it connected to the budget, and I would like the number of staff reporting to these people. Does that make sense when I say that? Because I don't want to get crossways last time.
Yeah, there's multiple aspects of this. Starting with your last question, does that make sense? Yes, and we gave it to you last year. We'll give it to you again. We've got yet another version of this org chart that does exactly what you say by funding source. And we will email that to you. It shows everybody that reports up through back office. I'm gonna have to do some work with the finance team around connection to nodes. That is beyond my expertise. And last year we showed you that we were amongst the thinnest staffed of all neighboring districts of comparable size. We showed you that by statistical data, we can do it again, but it is not gonna change the debate if people just believe, for reasons of personal experience or conviction, that we should be able to operate with less. It may come to a question of the committee about how to interact with that difference. I will tell you that it is nearly impossible to do our job as it is to be a teacher. This work is very difficult right now. And if we don't invest in small targeted ways, in the things that make our systems work for kids, it doesn't matter whether a class size is smaller. We won't be able to recruit and hire the people to take the jobs. If we don't have data engineers and data systems that tell us how kids are performing, we will never know if we're making progress. And so this is an austerity budget. I mean, we're down to the point of debating about adding plumbers. We are down to the point of debating about whether or not we can share services. We are down to nothing at this point, and we'll provide that data again, and we'll have a version of that conversation that more fully meets your needs. But I'm gonna foreshadow that we're gonna come again, and we're going to take a thoughtful position in contradiction to your claim that we're heavy, because I have never seen a district operate like this before.
So, can I have a follow-up? You say again, last time I just got the 70. I didn't get the amount of people below them, nor did I get their connection to the budget.
I think we got you the people below them. It was an annotated chart that had boxes that were colored by funding source with numbers. And we'll make sure that that's as clear as it can be and presented to you so that you can see how to see the back office function, the administrative layer below supervisor. Because I do think that's a place we slipped last year. We thought we gave you the right thing and it ended up not being quite right. connection to nodes, again, I think I'm going to have to connect you and our finance team, and we're going to have to talk about what you're actually looking for to see if we can
Yeah,
fulfill that.
it's just a foundational budget document. When anybody builds any budget, you know where your staff are and where they're hitting, where their expenses are hitting. And so that's what I'm looking for, where your staff are and where they're hitting in your budget. So hopefully that won't be long to pull.
I think as long as we can norm on terms, it should be fairly easy.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So Satya and then Kelly, and then I know we're back to you again. They wanted to respond to her. Is that okay? Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. When I kind of look at it, it's like, for me, thank you, Catherine, for bringing this topic up. You know, this is the way I look at it. It's like, you know, if you're a doctor, you have a back office, and somebody's working with insurance, this, that, scheduling, etc. So if you say kind of cut the whole back office, only add 2 doctors, that's not going to work, because we are dealing with so many different funding streams. I mean, in a funny way, I say it's like a jungle juice of mixing everything and then trying to make it work. If they don't send the necessary reports, we don't get the necessary dollars. You know, so it really, it's a very, it's not a simple system. That's what I've kind of figured out in the 6 years. So we really have to keep answering to so many masters, federal masters, state masters, etc. Some are unfunded, some are So there is a whole back-end machinery that has to keep reporting. The frustration I have experienced in the last 6 years, or even before that, is a lack of access to data. For me, the data is our children. We keep talking about equity, but nobody is arguing based on, okay, what does the data say? Everybody is throwing their own little narrative or implicit biases. So without data, if you can't measure something, you can't change it. You can't hold systems accountable. Ultimately, public has to hold me accountable. They can only hold me accountable by showing some changes in number. And one of the things I've heard in the last 6 years, everybody's arguing, but nobody's willing to share the data. So I would really like to see the whole system transparent. This is not something that happened overnight. This is like decades of underinvestment in our basic infrastructure to make this organization a transparent organization. So what we are seeing is almost like an anemic response. Nobody has been able to say, how much does it cost to educate a 3rd grader so that they can read proficiently? What does it cost? And somebody will say, go read up QEM. But when I read that, after some time you get lost, because the legislature is never funded according to the QEM, 25% less than what they created. So it has been always a very anemic system. Teachers are right in saying, you know, the cost of living has gone up. They are right in asking for more. And after this COVID and school closure, the scale of the problem ballooned, and nobody has done a costing after this problem thing. So we are really adding like this, add this mental health, add this disability, add this thing. But nobody has sat and said, penciled it out and saying, how much does it cost? So we're really trying to do a business without understanding the cost involved, and a lot of things get added. And sometimes it does escalate. So I really feel there is a big problem, and most of our money after ballot measure 5 and 50, we are dependent on the state general fund. That's it. And now of that, almost like 25 or 26% goes towards PERS. We have no control. So what we are left is only a small portion to play with. And I'm really concerned with the changes in the federal government and the stand we have taken as a state. That is going to really affect about 13 or 14% of our money. So, and if you don't send the reports, even that will be at risk. And I don't want to see the civil rights of our children violated and no way of even knowing what is going on. So I really want to preserve some kind of administrative oversight. It is really important to protect, because these are public's children we are dealing with. So it really has to be there. If a staff gets injured, they have to fill out an OSHA report, and that has to be reported. Otherwise, I'm violating some law, I suppose. We need to count these children. How many of them are in AP? How many of them are getting expelled and suspended? We have to keep sending the report. That's the Office of Civil Rights in federal government. So I don't know how we can thin all that and stop doing that. And I think the biggest problem is we have been doing it, but nobody is using it. Our public has no access to it. So I really would like to make sure that that part of the function doesn't compromise. The question I have is, you're trying to run with such a thin crew of 1.1% who are performing the oversight function, and now 96% of the general fund you're going to be spending in the thing. I don't see this is a safe cushion we have in case there is a problem. Like when we had COVID, we had to really change our systems. A lot of them are not children facing. So how can we, I would even argue we should spend a little bit less than 96% and save a little bit of cushion money, because if you don't get that 14% or 13%, then how are we going to deal with the systems? We have like close to 80% Title I kids and so many other children who are dependent on that money. So I don't think the state has factored all that in terms of their budgeting. About 20 million or whatever raise they're going to give us will go towards purse. So I'm not entirely sure. And you're talking about disability, children with special needs. Only 11% of them we can get some weightage, but we are having about 18% of them, which we have to just eat the cost out of, move the money here and there. So I would be even more conservative than spending 96% on labor expense and leave us with no cushion, because it's so hard to predict which child is going to go off and how many staff you need. You really need a little bit of flexibility. So I'm probably saying our revenue is just so limited, and all these unfunded mandates are so high. Somewhere we'll have to be upfront and say we don't have the money, and yet we can't compromise on the oversight function. So I just want to have a healthy balance. That's all I'm trying to say. So if we completely gut the administrative thing or bring it so narrow we are not sending the reports, then that would give me a lot of concern. We have children from Black families and all these historically underserved communities, and I'm really worried about oversight, civil rights, etc., for which I need to see the numbers, and they have to be reported by law, I believe. Thank you.
I think that the bookend of those two questions plus my response in the middle demonstrates the impossibility of the situation, because we all want everything to be better and we want everything to be on its way to being excellent. And at the stage that we're in, people are the things that make that true. They make it true in classrooms, they make it true in cafeterias, they make it true in buses, they make it true in central office. I do want to clarify something about the 96%. That is the percent of single year revenue that is budgeted to people. But that is not the same as not having a cushion, because it's single year revenue. It does not include the beginning fund balance. And so I take us back to this view as a partial response, that what that shows is that we are gravely overburdened in our single most important funding source with personnel. But what it doesn't show is that at least for this budget year, we retain an ending fund balance within policy targets. That is the cushion. The cushion is not the difference between 96 and 93 or 93 and 85. But inside the 96, you can see how it's starting to squeeze out our ability to do other things like curriculum transfers. And this is where it's just it's really hard to find I hesitate to even call it a sweet spot, because it's not very sweet. The best balance, the most artful and intentional balance of what everybody needs today and what needs to be true tomorrow.
Thank you, Andrea. Go ahead, Kelly. Kelly, whenever you're ready, you're fine. And I want to make sure there's still no questions, right, from Oscar or Jean? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for all of this. It's 2 hours of learning, and we're not done, which I don't say cynically. I just realized that sounded a little cynical. I didn't mean that. I'm really appreciating this discussion. It's democracy in action, and I like that. My worldview, just my training, professional training, is to be skeptical of anything that gets reduced down to like single solutions, zeros and ones, black and white understandings. And so in the context of all of this that I've been listening to, I'd like to invite you and your team, you don't have to answer any of this now because I don't think it's answerable, but as you're looking at some of these other questions, I'd like to invite you to bring us some other things too, if you can. One of those is, what's the impact on your budgeting of the challenge of retention? And I don't just mean teachers, but I also mean administrators, just capable, experienced administrators who can be hired away if they're not being compensated fairly. Teachers, we all know very well, are exiting for other places, either for lower workloads or higher pay, other things. So I'm curious, what can you share with us? What do you all know? I don't want to give you a new task. I would just want to invite you to say, like, what do you know about that, and how does that inform how you've built the budget and how we should think about a lot of these questions that we're asking?
Yeah.
And then a second thing, to Mr. Guthridge's question of about half an hour or more ago, following up on the behavior specialist hiring, do you all have any kind of estimate or attempt to understand how the building of a budget for a school district today involves more spending? What fraction of the spending? Is there some factor that you all are just automatically losing to outside forces you have no control over, like the fact that the state of Oregon doesn't have enough mental health providers, and that here in the Willamette Valley, we don't have, in particular, you mentioned this yourself, that you have to go all the way to Portland. Where I work, we have the same problem. So these to me are, I just want to extend this invitation. Can you bring us that kind of information too, that helps us see the nuanced picture of how you all are thinking about building that budget and the way that you have to take some of these other factors into account. And there may not be any right or wrong answers, but, and I can do some of this attempt to learn on my own between now and next week, which I'll try to do. But I'd really welcome hearing about that. Those two ideas: attrition as a challenge for the budget, and how much do you all have to figure out how much to spend on things that really wouldn't have been there 25, 30 years ago because society's changed and the challenges have changed, and external supports like medical care and mental health care aren't what they should be out in the community. And so the schools, as you said, doors are always open. Just like an emergency room, the doors are always open. Those are the places that have to spend in order to take care of this. So I don't think I have a question that needs to be answered now, but I'd certainly welcome any information you all have there to help us understand what we're contemplating.
I think one of those we can, without asking for a vote, I think we can bring you, which is, it won't be specific to our budget, but there is actually quite thorough research about the costs of attrition by job types, especially as it gets to the point of building leaders. So we can do a quick kind of roundup of that and bring it to you. It's certainly illustrative and a little bit alarming. And then on your second question, I think that's harder for us because I don't know how we would cost that out, but I'll give you a very practical story. The incredible skill that Sarah Head has brought to this finance team, the things that enable us to show you her landing the plane on the dot with incredibly complex and interactive assumptions, makes her an incredible asset. And Sarah has decided to take a job at the state. I was talking to a recruiter today, and he said, "You will never recruit the CFO that your system needs for what you're paying. Now, you can see, and you can maybe even feel in me what like a moment of reeling that is, because then we're left with this impossible situation, which is, do we pay more at an executive level to fill roles that, I mean, I can do some of this, but I can't be Sarah Head. I cannot be a finance director. I cannot be a CFO. Do we pay what the market's demanding and encounter even more of the feelings of unjustness and dismay? Or do we compromise and likely end up with someone who is less skilled or less experienced than our system deserves at a moment when we actually need the best skill to get us through the next 5 years? It's an anecdote, but this is how we get trapped from the top and from the bottom within a compressed and competitive market that isn't very differentiated, and it's not funded to deal with the scarcity. Another example, speech-language pathologists. It is one of our most severe shortage areas. I don't know what we would have to pay to fill those vacancies, but it would be an extraordinary amount to really recruit them because it's such a shortage area. But it is also a service that's required under IEPs. It's a service that our kids need. And so we get stuck in these really complicated corners between funding, the market, and the law. And it's hard to escape sometimes. We build a budget and we build a process that does our best to lean into every one of those complexities and make it work. But we need better than make it work for our kids in classrooms. We need it to truly work.
Thank you. And we still have a patient question from William.
Hopefully this is an easy one. You said something about school safety. Could you tell me what that is? What does school safety consist of?
I think I was probably talking about, can we go back to the slide that we're talking about our school, our campus safety specialists? I think that is what I said. So we've got about 60 campus safety specialists who are dedicated to schools. They're constantly on site. They're supporting safety issues. They're supporting students and staff. If you go to any of our events, you'll see them there. They're wearing blue vests. They are an incredible asset that contributes to the safety of all of our schools.
Thank you. Superintendent, I was curious about, excuse me, the 12 FTE for the special education, the clinical practicum program. Is there a percentage or portion of money, I know if you're collaborating with another education institution, that they are investing to help offset costs that we would implement in our budget to bring in those students to be a part of this new fiscal year 26 investment? Dollar amount?
It's a program I'm really hopeful about. It's also an example of a place where we spend some money at the front end because it's going to pay off later. And I don't have those details, but we can hear.
We can get you the specific number, but there is an investment also on Western Oregon University's part. We have a specific amount that we pay for each of those credits that is very different to any other group that would go into the program. So we can bring you all of those details. In the benefit to the employee, which it's pretty significant.
No follow-up? Catherine, go ahead. Oh, and then Sartia, sorry.
Is it me online?
No.
Mine's quick. So of the special education, the reason I'm on the budget committee actually is my son has dyslexia, and I was poking around the budget looking for funding for dyslexia services, and fun fact, we do not support dyslexia students, even though it is 10% of our students. Well, I mean, statistically, 10% of the population struggles with dyslexia. something as simple as when I had his IEP meeting, like the Chromebook, we can actually get that. The IT person was there and he was like, we can actually put this in dyslexia font, which dyslexia font is a lot easier for my son. And all of his reading materials show up in dyslexia font when you put that in the Chromebook, and that's free. But we just don't have any dyslexic support, which is imperative to reading. And so for those special, just me now. For those special education, do we have anybody specializing in teaching and working with dyslexics and reading?
Yes, we can also bring you more information about these, but I'll tell you, we do a screening every year for students to be able to screen for dyslexia.
Yeah.
And then we have resources within the schools to support students through it, and then we build it into their IEP plans. There's not a person, maybe if you're asking for there's not a person in the special education department who is serving specifically for dyslexia services. Is that
Yeah.
what you're asking?
Yeah, because my son did, I mean, he's on an IEP. He did receive services, but to teach dyslexics to read, there's an established way, and it is a specialized way to teach them to read. Just having them sit in a room with other troubled readers does not teach them to read. They have to, there's other methods that they have to go through to learn that skill, depending on the severity. So we have had to have access, we are fortunate enough to have access to outside support. Many families in the Salem-Keizer School District that I hear from, parents do not have that ability. And so I am looking for somebody specialized, if that is what we're getting in this 12. I know we have a skimp budget, I get it. But if we have indeed somebody specialized to teach dyslexics to read, because you have them in the Salem-Keizer School District.
Follow up to my previous question about the Western Oregon partnership. Is there a ratio of potential practicum students for the 12 FTE that they would work with, those 12 FTE? Is there, I know you said there's a long-term investment where you would see growth, but is there like a class size number that you guys can bring back? What's the projected or hopeful outcome for this program as far as students go, so we can see if that's measurable for a long-term?
I think what we can do is bring you back a one-page summary of how the clinical practicum works, including what their practicum experience looks like. And ultimately, I think that the measures of success you're looking for are going to be placement retention rates through the duration of the program, because it is challenging to be a student at the same time that you are adulting, at the same time that you are working in a practicum setting every day full-time. But it's going to be retention and ultimately placement in Salem-Keizer special education classrooms. I think a one-pager will fill in a large number of the gaps around practicum model design, and what the practicum experience looks like in terms of students.
Thank you for your patience, Shafti. Go ahead.
I just want to go back to the question of this children with disability and, the special education. I know historically the state has given us about 11% cap, or only that much they will allow us to ask for an additional weightage beyond whatever the base money is there. We have about 18%. And I don't know how it's all going to pan out, whether we get the federal money or not, or if the state decides to come up with something else as an interim budget. Is there a way to kind of keep that aside and, and it could be a targeted investment within the children with special needs who have, say, more than one type of disability or a higher need? Because if it gets distributed among all the 18% or among all the staff salary increase, it's going to get diluted and it's not going to serve any purpose for anything. So how do we protect that kind of funding which can be used? In other words, the dollar will follow the child with the disability as opposed to getting into the total pool of all the money pooled together, and then it will lead to staff increase. It may not directly impact the child with disability. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will add a little context so that everybody follows the multiple dimensions of that. I think Director Chandragiri is talking about the possibility of additional state funding over the current 11% cap. That is still a possibility, but it's unclear. Federally, there are no near or midterm signals of a decrease in federal funding for students with disabilities, which is specifically IDEA. The way that special education funding currently operates throughout the country is heavily governed by federal regulation, which requires, in fact, that you're always tracking and, in effect, segmenting and protecting the amount you spend on special education services from other parts of the budget. It's called maintenance of effort. And so what it means is that you can never, using any fund, including local funds, spend less in a year than you did the previous year on special education services. So there are inherent and very strict safeguards that are currently in place. Relative to your question about potential new revenue for, to address the cap, I will again say, if new revenue comes through, we cannot use it to immediately increase COLAs or reduce or increase staff, because that slope, all we will be doing is making it a steeper cliff to fall from in 27. And that is a heartbreaking testament to the fact that as a district, we spend about $130 million a year on special education right now, which is far more than the state gives us and far more than the feds give us. I think we get about 12 or 13 million from IDEA, far more than the 11%. If the state gives us more money, what it helps us do gets back to the question that Jean asked earlier. It helps us become more whole. It helps us become more balanced. It doesn't immediately offer the opportunity to start staffing up because we received new revenue.
It just indemnifies us for whatever we are spending from something else.
That is a thoughtful way to put it. Yeah, at 130 million on special education services, not, I think we're maybe a little bit high with a 17% identification rate, but this is what's happening to every district in America right now, because the federal government has never completed its special education funding promise to school districts, and states have been left trying to figure out how to fill in the gap.
So just as a follow-up, if you take the overall budget, I mean, you don't have to answer it now, what percentage of our money we are spending for increase in mental health or this behavioral problem? You know, the challenges we are facing recently, at least in this budget or the previous budget, compared to instructional teaching kind of thing. Because I just think that some of these children have Medicaid and they have health coverage. Probably we may have to start talking about how do we do some braiding of funds rather than trying to make do with whatever little this anemic school funding that the state has been giving us every year. It's like 25% less than QEM. It's just a matter of time. It's kind of, it's not sustainable. Smaller districts will go into bankruptcy. We have just escaped that.
One of the FTE that is part of our 66 is a person who will offer capacity to expand our Medicaid reimbursement. This is one of the things where there are cases where you have to have a little bit of money to make a lot more money. Medicaid reimbursement is very complex, and it takes skill from multiple people, and it takes a certain moxie to just make sure that every administrative requirement, however Byzantine, gets done. So that is one example. You're describing it as braiding. I'm describing it as leveraging. We can't let reimbursable dollars slip through our fingers with a budget like this. In terms of an answer to your increase question, it's about a $13 million increase this year compared to last year in special education, mental and behavioral health services. 13 million.
No, in terms of, you talked about Portland gets, or that they have some levy or something like that. When a levy like that adds extra money, does the state take away their share of state funding because they follow some kind of equity for all districts?
No, local option levies are exempt from equalization. the underlying premise is if a community wants to and is able to fund their school districts above the levels established by the state, then they are free to do so, which is why I feel that there is a fundamental equity or justice-related problem.
Yeah.
When we live in and serve a incredible community, but we don't happen to be one that can easily pass and fund significant property tax increases to pay for work that is even as worthy as education.
Well, we have a lot of families who are just barely making it. And we have like about $1.6 billion worth of state property who don't pay any tax. So we are in a very disadvantaged point. There's only so much shakedown we can have. I mean, everybody is kind of going and asking them to pay more, pay more. So it's a kind of a balance, Perhaps Portland is a richer city compared to us, where, a lot more investment has gone in. So I'm just thinking, moving forward, that is not going to be a viable option in my mind, at least, whether adding an additional levy to everything else. Everybody wants to levy people. So until the state gives us something in the name of equity, because our Constitution guarantees equity, our Oregon Constitution. So they have to give us something proportionately for the property tax they're not paying on the building. I mean, they're getting away. So until then, we'll be running in circles. It's the same discussion we had 2 years ago, last year. And so I don't know what is the solution to adding more taxing people. There's only so much people can be paying.
It is yet another version of the really tight corner we're in. And we all know in Salem that it's not just schools, the city. Every part of government that is staff intensive is facing the same escalating personnel costs, revenue that isn't keeping pace, and therefore contraction pressures in order to pass a balanced budget. I will only briefly add to your comments to say that a really comprehensive 6-part study was done of school financing in Oregon, and to cut right to the bottom line, after accounting for differences in community needs and student needs, the conclusion was that Salem-Keizer is underfunded between $5,800 and $6,200 per child in order to get the outcomes that Catherine's been talking about and we all know they deserve. That number puts us, it was the second highest quintile of complexity and need. Portland was, I believe, at the second. And it just gives you kind of a mental frame of reference about the differences of educating students in very different geographies in the state.
Those were good reports if you want to go read them. I mean, they're long, but
They are long, it's true.
if you're looking for an adrenaline rush.
Yes, I recommend 5 if you're only going to read 1.
Well, I'd like to, I know I didn't say any questions. I know everyone's probably eager to wrap up. I do want to give you an opportunity. Had you had a question that you were pondering, or are you good? You seem good now.
I'm good.
Okay. Trying to read body language for the most part. And I want to make sure I'm not neglecting anyone for the last time out there, Ashley, right? Okay, thanks, Erin. All right, so I'm going to spit out just a couple things really quick. Some things I had answers to some things that were mentioned throughout this, but I can share those individually. So what I would like to see for our district, so I don't know if Miss Sarah is already MIA or not, but I think it's pertinent that we use our resources while we have them. I think it's overdue we are for a close audit. I know we came close to that last year, whichever, but I think sharing that maybe with board, maybe we could help with areas of cuts, things that aren't legally mandated maybe. I know there were some areas, and I could spit them out now, but for the sake of shortening this, I will share them again with you, my thoughts. But I think that we're at a now or never point, it seems. So if we're going to think about necessities and what our job is as a school, or if we think in a couple years, who knows, maybe we too will no longer have a district, then I think we're forced to have to look at these things. And so I don't know if something in audit would help, maybe before we bring on the data engineering techs or not, if we can regroup and see how much it's needed. I understood, Jonathan, that you're pretty, I don't know if you do some data when you came on. I was thinking we'd talked about that earlier. So just to kind of regroup, recap there, and I know that you're all working on that, and that's what you do, but I would be interested as a board to know that in more detail. And again, that audit, I think looking at it, I know we still give money to Chariots, and it's like, okay, is that a necessity? We might get federal funding cut. I would like to see, we said maybe it would take a half day to figure out, say that money was gone tomorrow. If it took the staff a half day or a day, just in general, you were spitting out the other day, Andrea, what we would then quickly look at and do to kind of, to work through that, because we'd have to work through it. Like you said, our doors have to remain open. How do we keep our doors open? We need to be proactive to what comes next, and we need to use the resources that we have now to do it instead of continuing to just wait to come down the pike. And I think that you're doing a good job doing that. I think you have the capacity to do it. This whole curriculum is nerve-wracking to me because I understand, and they've said this multiple times, don't worry, DEI is embedded in all of that. So what might happen with that? For example, if we have curriculum we're trying to purchase and roll out, and then we learn that maybe it's not what we're supposed to be having, are we going to be forced to have to redact all of that? Do you get what I'm saying, or?
Well, I'm up to 6 questions, so
Yeah.
I think if you could pause, I want to walk through
And you
each
don't
of-
have to answer now.
But I
just wanna
can't,
share.
the thing is that this is our chance to be specific about what the question is.
Thank you.
I can't leave without clarity, so if you could pause, I want to walk through each of these if we can. So first on federal funding, I mean, I guess we're living in a time in which anything can happen, but I spent significant time with the Department of Ed yesterday to get to clarity on this. Our maximum exposure for the budget you are facing right now is $1 million. We can absorb that if we need to, and that is because the uncertainty that's happening is happening for the next federal fiscal year. Not 25, 26, it's 26, 27. Now, of course, could things that none of us have ever imagined happen? We are living in a time where that is patently true. But when we talked last, I didn't have that additional amount of clarity. So to answer your question about a contingency plan for federal funding, at $1 million, we actually don't need that contingency plan. We can accommodate that amount of federal fund loss within our existing budget. All right. Second one, I'm not sure in fact, I am sure I don't understand what you mean by an audit. We do a comprehensive, an annual audit every year, but that is not going to identify things like Chariots because it's really an assessment of our accounting practices, our financial management practices, internal controls. It has a very regimented and standard footprint. I think you're asking for a third-party audit of everything that the school district spends money on with as a comparison point, the criteria of is it legally required. That would take a year probably. There's absolutely no way that we can do that in this budget cycle because it would require so much unpacking to figure out what the answer to the question legally required means. Is a crossing guard legally required?
Do you want me to give you an example that?
No, I'm saying I need to know what you're asking for. Examples won't help us create an audit in the next 2 weeks, which is the amount of time we really have. I think if you have a specific question, like, for example, we could work with Chariots and you could say, are we still making an investment in Chariots? And what other kinds of third-party intergovernmental transfers are there like that? Then we have criteria. We're like, okay, we know exactly what to look for, and then we can go get that for you. But that's what we learned from last year. We have to know what you're asking us to look for in order to know that we can
Same
bring
thing.
it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Chariots, so we have our school bus system. Can we revisit the idea of making a cut like that? The DEI 2.4 million that
Wait,
now.
hang on a second. I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you just because I really want to be disciplined about what you're asking for. So are you asking us in a follow-up to bring all intergovernmental transfers, which would include chariots, because we can 100% do that.
Well, we talked about the quantum that we choose, right, to invest in that particular program as a district. And we talked about that a lot last year during the budget committees. And so, but it was discerned that it was of value for us to keep something like that. So I understand that we're going to be okay this year, but next year, are we setting ourselves up for failure next year? What if we cannot pass a levy? All of that. Are we going to reach a point where we say, oh, shoot, man, we already have buses, which we have to have. Do we have to have the extra chariots? Do we have to have this other $2.4 million program?
So I think what's happening now is just a process slip between us, because I'm trying to collect questions so that the next meetings can be dedicated to more intensive interrogation by the committee, and to have an informed interrogation of something like chariots or intergovernmental agreements. You will need the data in front of you to talk about it. I think, Director Hudson, what you're asking for is a discussion about chariots right now, which is not a data collection question for us.
Yeah.
But if there is a question that we can research and bring back to you, we would be happy to do that.
The question is, are you willing to, as a district, not research it? Because we came up with the quantum, and if I had last year's budget in front of me, I would share it. The quantum that you said that the district, for example, I'm just using that chariots as an example, that the districts invest into chariots to, provide extra for our students. Are you willing to have the conversation and allow us to give our input of where we think, maybe with other eyes and opinions, that possibly we could afford to cut to maintain? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I think what that means is we're gonna bring you the chariots information to the next meeting, because you need the information to have that discussion. You're asking me about our decision about it as a high return on investment element of the budget. But right now, I just want to make sure you guys have access to the information you need so that you can have that discussion, not just with me and our team, but amongst yourselves at the next budget committee meeting. And so I think you've given me enough to know what to bring you on chariots. I still don't think we can pursue the audit question as it is so widespread in its potential capacity that it will outstrip our ability to do work at that level this late in the budget process.
So, and if you mean that you're going to collect statistics on chariots that you presented with us last year, I mean, that's okay, because that's not what I'm requesting, so you don't have to spend time to do that. Is that what you're thinking that I'm asking?
I don't know what you're asking.
On the value? Oh, okay, when you just recited what you thought my question was.
I thought I did, but I clearly don't. So
that's
what
okay.
can we bring you?
The question I was, the way I was asking a question was seeking more of like a yes or no answer with, so we've made suggestions before about certain things that seem like we could afford to shave off, or maybe put some money from this pocket to help the reading, the dyslexia or something. And the answer has been no. So I was just wondering, is your willingness, it's like when we sit here and we have all these discussions and your precious time, thank you so much, I know you're all tired, to look at this budget and take it seriously, because it sounds like we're always facing these dire situations and risks. So it seems like we talk about them, but we either approve or deny what the district decides in the end. So I was wondering if we make blatant requests, if you would be willing to hear them and consider them during this budget cut. That's a very,
I can answer.
question.
That is what we will do next. That is what we will do next. That is, I think, the spirit of the democratic process that you mentioned. And there's multiple aspects of the confusion that is unfolding right now. The first is that you are the decision makers in this. I am not the decision maker. I am a person who takes this budget extremely seriously and has spent a year building it. I have, along with our team, looked at every element of it and tried to make the most discerning, intentional, balanced decisions. But in the end, you are the decision makers, not me. Will we answer every question that we understand in its phrasing, and will we do research for everything that is reasonable? Yes. Will we have the conversation, you with me, or you amongst yourselves, or you with any member of the team, about anything like chariots? Yes. Will we tell you why we think it matters? Absolutely. I'm just struggling to get a handle on what the research question is so that we can be prepared and prepare you for the next meeting. And I still think it is probably ridership, cost, utilization rates, both in and out of school. Those are the things that we use when we look at a question like, is a district contribution to a municipal service a good, okay, or poor use of district resources? I think that will arm you guys with everything you need to ask the really incisive questions and expect answers from us.
It's okay. Go ahead, Ashley. We're done.
I think part of what we're going through right now too can be addressed in the budget committee protocols, the second half of the page, that outlines the process, I think, for what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and by statute, Chrissy, it's you and Maria that you can determine what you want to ask. The budget committee may demand and receive any information the committee requires for the revision and preparation of the budget document. That's statute. So that's you and Maria. So you can make the call.
Thanks.
I would like to see the AGAs if it's on the table.
If you want to make that request, I'm going to write it on my little note sheet.
And then one small question is, brief note is the consumer, budget note 410, consumable supplies and materials, it's been jumping. So what's in, if I could get what's in that budget note, that'd be great.
What page?
Oh, it's on a lot of pages. I mean, there's 109. As noticed, it's jumping like 1.4, 1.6.
So all of the consumables?
Yeah, it's budget note 410. It's carrying through like all your different, yeah, it's carrying, it's also on 98.
And are you asking for us to look into it and tell you why you're seeing that kind of volatility?
Yeah,
Okay.
it has jumped 2 million, 1.4 million, like what's in it?
Okay. Chrissy, I want to come back to, sorry, Director Hudson, I want to come back to, so we got to chariots. I'm still not sure what to do about the audit, but maybe we can talk offline and see what it is you're looking for, and if there is a way that we can provision parts of your question. Then your question about DEI embedded, is your question about whether or not it's creating a federal funding risk?
Yeah, like, are we going to, yes.
Is it about whether it's creating a federal funding risk?
Yes.
Yes. I think I'm going to tell you now that that is an unanswerable question, because it's not merely that I can't answer it, it's that it is tied up in dozens of lawsuits with many geographies, many parties to the suit. It is unanswerable as a question of federal funding eligibility. I would answer it if I could. I just literally, no one knows the answer to that question.
I'm going to add clarification, but not now. Thank you. Did you get yours done, answered? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry, next time blankets and pillows will bring rain. Honestly, truly. I mean, all the volunteers and everyone staying late, and all of you as well. We appreciate you being here and investing in our district, and just the love and the passion that you all have, truly. So, I don't know, you don't have a closing statement, or?
No, unless people would like me to extend this for 5 more minutes, I perhaps could, but I think we probably have done our work for today.
All right, so a little reminder, all budget committee members should have received their calendar of meetings, which we talked about at the top. And we'll see everyone back Wednesday, May 14th, 6 p.m. for next budget committee meeting. So thank you so much, honestly.